Hey guys, welcome to Holy Homestead in the Making. Today we're making apple pie filling, and this is my very first time making it, and I made it with you guys. So I'm gonna start by peeling each apple, and to be honest, these apples sat on my counter for way too long, so I had to cut off some bad spots, and that's okay. I do that usually when I'm trying to preserve apples. I've let them go just a little too far, but they're worth saving anyhow. I'm going to use some Santa Cruz in one of my ice cream pails that I keep to try to keep these apples from browning. I'm using this apple core, which y'all, if y'all do any kind of apple preservation, this apple core is the way to go. It's well worth the investment. These pomme apples are really on the small side, and as you can tell, they've got some significant bruising. The Santa Cruz just was not cutting it as far as keeping the apples from browning. So I did throw some Fruit Fresh in there. This is the next day. I did throw a little extra Fruit Fresh on these apples before I threw them in the fridge. I did go ahead and get a pot of water boiling before I brought you guys along for this adventure. We are going to blanch these apples. Most recipes that I saw said that you should blanch them. It also helps you to get more apples into each jar so you have a higher apple to filling ratio than if you had not. We're going to blanch each set of apples for 1 minute a piece. And the recipe called to do it 6 cups at a time. I really wish that I would have done that, but I only had a 4-cup measuring cup. In hindsight, I really would have took a bowl or something and measured out the other 2 cups so I could have done it all at one time because it would have saved me some time. But anyhow, I am trying to get these out with a wooden spoon, which proved to be very difficult, so I got a slotted spoon out. I really could have used a spider strainer at this time, but I don't have one. So if you don't either, just use a slotted spoon. It works fine. Now, guys, I'm making a pretty big mistake here. I'm supposed to be leaving the lids on everything because I couldn't keep my water boiling without the lid on it. And then the apple's cool if you don't keep the lid on it. So just make sure you do better than I did on this. Here I have little Johanna Banana, and she just got up from her nap looking so sweet. She was with me all about 3 seconds before she decided she wanted to go outside with her daddy and her brother, which was fine. Here I'm going ahead and getting some jars heated up in my water bath canner. As I work each one of these batches, you definitely want to warm your jars before you go and put really hot liquid inside the jars. Otherwise, you run the risk of cracking, busting, or nicking your jars, which is absolutely not what you want. So in between each batch, I'm going ahead and getting the next batch ready to go. This is about the time that I start realizing I really should have pre-measured these apples because I got totally lost in the process and I wasn't sure by the end if I had 16 cups or 20 cups or 24 cups. So pre-measure. This part of the footage has absolutely nothing to do with making apple pie filling, but it is so sweet and I just couldn't bring myself to cut it out. She now brings me all her dirty dishes to the sink and I'm so proud of her. As a little side note, this is of no importance, but I wanted to encourage you guys, if you can peel, slice, and core an apple, you can make apple pie filling because that absolutely was the hardest and most tedious part of the entire process. It took me longer than probably anything else and required more of my attention. This is my last batch of apples to go through the blanching process. Y'all, that means I only had 16 cups of apples when I should have had 24 because I doubled the pie filling ratio, but not the apples apparently because I couldn't remember where I was at in the process. But you know what I've learned with Canaan? And side note, here's my goofy little dance. I was glad to be this far into the process. I never thought I would actually get this done. I was supposed to have a stainless steel pot. I'm just using my nonstick, and it seemed to work just fine. I'm going to go ahead and measure up, I think 5.5 cups. Is that right? 5.5 cups of sugar, which seems like a lot, but it's nothing compared to jellies or jams. And this recipe called for 1.5 cups of clear gel. I did not have that, so I omitted that. I did 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a half teaspoon of nutmeg, which I am having to grind that and make it my own. My brother's ex-girlfriend actually brought me this nutmeg from overseas, and I think it's such a cool thing that I have fresh nutmeg that came from overseas. I did do a whole teaspoon of ginger and then 7.5 cups of water, which you don't get to see all that. But I'm going to bring this liquid up to a boil, and once it's boiling, we're going to add 1 cup of lemon juice. That did take a while, and I knew if I was supposed to add these apples in there that I definitely was going to have to do it in a bigger container. So I had to use my water bath canner to do that, then wash it and water bath in it. And this is my question for you guys. So it called for me to throw the apples inside the filling mixture and cook it for like a minute. Is that really necessary? Could I not just have packed these apples down in the jar and then poured the filling over there? I really need that answered for me. Here I'm checking all the rims of my jars, which really should have been done before I started packing them, because I do end up finding one that is nicked and have to repack it. I'm pretty aggravated, even though I may not have shown it. But once I have checked them, I'm going ahead and wiping them down with a little bit of distilled vinegar to cut anything that's sticky on those jars. Make sure to center your lid and then tighten those to about a fingertip tighten level, which just means tighten it, but don't vice grip it. I did not know what that meant when I first started canning. I say this every time that I'm going to check my jars before I ever put anything in them, but I never actually do. I always check them at this part of the process, which is kind of dumb because I dirtied up a jar and then had to, repack that one, which wasn't that huge of a deal. I went ahead and got these in the canner, and you bring it up to a rolling boil. Once it becomes a rolling boil, you start a time to process it for 25 minutes. Here, I've taken them off, though my timer's already went off. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but I actually messed up because I didn't put the clear gel in there. I actually should have processed these for 30 minutes versus 25. Y'all, if I have some avid canners out there, let me know. Is that going to mess me up? I'm a little bit concerned about it, but I think it's going to be okay. I really don't want to go back and reprocess these because these apples will just be mushed by the time that I bake the apple pie filling. So here I am. I'm taking them out of the water. Now, I want to be very clear that you want to wait at least 5 minutes once you've removed the lid and took the pot off the heat before you take these jars out. And trust me, if you ever do this, you are going to know that you made a mistake because it's going to get to bubbling and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Here I am checking my seals the next day. You really want to take the rings off after they've set about 12 hours and pick them up from the ring just to assure that you have a good seal on each one. That will let you know if there's any false seals. We did not have one single false seal, and I count this all as a success and a learning privilege.